Good morning, everybody. We'll get started in just a minute. There is a link to the slide deck and the feedback on the screen. Also, our moderators today will be dropping those links in for us in the chat as well. But we'll get started here. We do have this will be a short and fast session. So we will definitely want to make sure we respect your time. So we will go ahead. It is 11:30 by my clock, so let's go ahead and get started. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Good morning. Good morning. You'll see the links for the slide deck on your screen. Also, the links have been dropped in the chat for the presentation, the feedback form, and the DLC website. So if you need those, if you do need to leave early, we totally understand, but you have those links there for you, and they will drop those in the chat. My name is Katie Haywood. I am one of the digital learning coordinators. I serve the Western area, and I'm going to be your facilitator today. And we have got Walt for sure is here with us today. Walt, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm Walt Tallman. I'm one of the area DLCs for the southern and southeastern areas.
So Walt's going to be helping me out. He's going to be keeping an eye on the chat. So if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to use that chat. He'll keep me posted on anything that's in there. And we're going to go ahead and jump right in. One thing we like to do is every session, we like to link it back to the North Carolina Digital Learning Standards. If you are not familiar with those are the new digital learning standards for students. And you will find a link to those in the speaker notes of the slide deck on this slide. But today we're going to be kind of focusing on 3 of those that connects to gamifying the classroom. Empowered learner, there's a lot of element of choice and student agency when you gamify your classroom. Computational thinker, you're breaking things down. Kids are breaking their learning down into pieces and moving through that in different steps and stages. And then innovative designer, where they're redesigning their thinking, they're working to solve a problem, and they're creating that solution that often requires multiple drafts, multiple iterations. So just a little link there to those North Carolina Digital Learning Standards. Feel free to explore those more with the link that's in the speaker notes. All right. Our objectives for today: by the end of the session, all of you will hopefully be able to explain the definition of gamification. You will describe elements of successful games, and you'll be able to incorporate elements of games into your classroom. So those are our goals, and I think we'll be able to make a pretty good headway on all of those today. So first thing we're going to do, I want you to think about your favorite game. What is your favorite game? Either a game you like to play as an adult, or a game you like playing as a child. You know, what is a game that you really enjoyed? And I want you to think for a minute, why do you like playing it? What is it about that game? And it might be very different for different people, and it might be very different for, even with the same game, for different reasons. So I want to play a little bit of games since we are talking about gamification. Let's play some games here. Does anybody want to volunteer and in the chat or out loud, try to describe their favorite game without using the name of the game to see if other people can guess what it is? So just kind of a little fun little intro warm-up game. Any volunteers, of anybody who'd like to try and describe their favorite game without actually using it, the name of it, see if other people can guess. All right, I see Barrel Lemons, our lucky volunteer. Come on down.
Great. Okay, I'm going to describe one of my favorite games, because I love to play games. It's something I do all the time, board games and games. So my favorite game involves teams, and what happens is each team is trying to draw something that will help the other person to guess the word that they're trying to portray.
All right, answers in the chat. Anybody have a guess?
Yeah, Pictionary.
All right. Nice. Yes. And we could have made this, of course, a little bit harder, play it taboo style, where I probably could have told you can't use the words draw or picture, but just a little fun. I see somebody else put in the chat here, A board game that has pieces, cards, and money. One guess. Taquanda, is it Monopoly? All right. So thank you for humoring me, you guys. Just kind of a fun little game to get us warmed up. But really what I want you to think about is, why do you like playing those games? What is it? What piece of it, what element makes that game enjoyable for you? So one thing we want to start with is there's a lot of misconceptions around what gamification is. And so I'm going to start off with what gamification is not, to kind of clear up those misconceptions right from the start. So gamification is not just slapping some points or badges on something. And that's kind of where our little GIF comes from. We can't just slap some points on and call it a day. But however, that is a really good place to start. Gamification is also not game-based learning. So that's a really big differentiation. I want you to get very clear. Something like Dreambox or Prodigy or trying to think off the top of my head, things, excuse me. If the game can do the training in isolation, then that's game-based learning, not gamification. All right. So just make sure that kind of is clear in your mind. If the excuse me, if the person playing the game can do all the learning through the game, then that's game-based learning. And finally, of course, gamification is not a silver bullet. Really, what is a silver bullet? Nothing. While it's a great strategy to engage students and to bring them in, it's not going to keep them in unless it's well done with other elements, other effective instructional elements added to it. So one thing I really wanted to mention here, just because we did bring up the gamified versus gamification versus game-based learning. These are just some examples, some kind of more details about the difference between those two. Gamification is when we're, adding game-inspired elements, we're incorporating badges, awards, achievements, etc. Whereas, the game-based learning is the learning comes from the game. It can be accomplished using pre-created games, things like that might involve simulations. So feel free to explore that at your own leisure. But I just wanted to include that if you were curious for more of the difference between the two of those. So what is gamification then? It is the concept of adding gaming mechanics or elements of games to non-gaming environments. And usually this is done to make tasks more enjoyable. Either in the workplace, in real life, and of course, in our context, school. So what are some real world examples of gamification? Gamification has been used extremely successfully in the real world. One of the most well-regarded examples is Nike Plus, the app that tracks people's fitness. It allows them to compete, to track their progress. Sorry, I got, excuse me. So, it kind of sets up that competitive, you want to make progress, achieve your goals. Starbucks, their loyalty program, where you earn points for purchases and you can work towards free items. That's a form of gamification. Fresh Desk, we're going to come back to that one in just a second. Foursquare, I don't know if any of you remember that. That was kind of that social commercial app where you could check into different locations. And if you're the person that checked in the most there, you got to become mayor of that location. And it was kind of that, social aspect of gaming. Gamification to fix behavior. In Stockholm, they partnered with Volkswagen to set up speed cameras to help people or to encourage people to respect speed limits. And so what they did is people who were driving the speed limit were entered into a lottery to win cash prizes that was paid for through the tickets of people who were caught speeding. And it worked. It worked in reducing speeding. So, that's an example of kind of behavior modification through prizes and elements of games. One of my favorite examples is this website called Fold It. It's actually a game where people play with proteins, and they play with, artificial proteins and how to fold them, and lots of medical, whatever application, but in a very user-friendly way. And what's so cool about this is this game was set up because real researchers and scientists don't have the time and resources to try out every protein variable out there to cure disease and to create vaccines and all of that. So they created this game-based, crowdsourced platform for people to play, to give them ideas of what might be viable proteins. So it's just a really cool example of kind of the world just coming together through game to solve real problems. And then the last one is a productivity example. There's an app called Do It Now, and that's what the screenshot is for, that's the screenshot is of that. And you can see how they've got tasks here. You can build up your characteristics. You can build up your skills. You earn XP. So it's got a lot of features of game design to increase your productivity. But the one I wanted to come back to is this example of Freshdesk. And this is a company that is based on customer help and like a help desk kind of thing. And they wanted to improve their employee performance. And so what they did is they employed a lot of gamification techniques, a lot of game elements. But what I really like about this example is they didn't just do one thing. They didn't just say, oh, we're just going to create a point system with leaderboards and the person at the top wins, right? They created badges and quests. They did have that leaderboard with a little bit of that healthy competition, but this is the part I love. They also created challenges in multiplayer environments so everybody could socialize and learn. So they built in this ability through the game to become better. So it wasn't just, oh, this is where you're at, these are the points you get, this is the award you earn, but the employees had the ability to learn and grow and become better through help with each other in these challenges. So just a really cool example of how you can use game elements to improve performance, get the kind of behaviors, so to speak, that you want. Anytime you see, I just want to make a little point here, anytime you see this black chain link icon, that is a link out to a website. So if you want to read more about some other examples of gamification in the real world, you can click that. So, but now I want to think about, which I accidentally just clicked on it. All right. So why does gamification work? What is it? Well, honestly, it's based on a lot of human psychology. Humans in general like games because they can give us this sense of achievement. As we earn levels, as we complete quests, we feel that sense of achievement. We have a little bit of control when we get to choose, I'm going to work on this quest or this activity. There are real emotions in games, excitement, like in Pictionary in that example. You get excited when they guess your picture, or in Monopoly when somebody lands on your space. There's a little bit of that satisfaction, right? So those real emotions come through games. And going to very basic brain science, when we get rewards as humans, that releases dopamine, which is that chemical in our brain that makes us feel good. And so there's that literal connection between rewards and feeling good. And when we achieve levels and when we achieve those corresponding rewards, that can almost kind of provide sometimes a feeling of exclusivity. Like if you think about that Starbucks example, those people who have reached those higher levels, they get special benefits and things that other customers don't get. So, humans sometimes like that little bit of feeling like they're, kind of special and one of a kind. All right, so we've kind of talked about why it works. We've talked about some examples, what it is. So now let's start thinking about designing our games and how we can incorporate these pieces into our classroom. So the first thing we're going to think about is game dynamics. This is the overarching kind of concepts that make games tick, if you will, what makes them enjoyable, what makes them playable. And there's kind of three big ideas. We've got this idea of competition, and that can sometimes be achieved through points, through leaderboards, through leveling. If I'm a higher level than you or whatever, if I want to get more points than you, or if it's just straight one-on-one, I want to win. So that can be an element of a game. There's also the kind of the opposing element of collaboration. Sometimes if you need to collect resources, you can work as a team to do that. You can problem solve together. You can create a product or create something together. Now, one thing I want to point out too is, of course, there's no reason why you can't have collaboration and competition together. Can you have team-based challenges where teams earn points? Teams move up the levels or the leaderboard. You can have some competition around creating something. So these aren't mutually exclusive, but just kind of an easy way to, distinguish and differentiate. And finally, this element of choice. We've heard over and over again that student choice can increase engagement, can increase motivation, and that's the same thing with games. When we can choose which quest we want to go on, if there's a narrative story for those quests that allow us to make choices that will impact the story, if we can choose which badges we want to earn or work on, that's going to increase that motivation. That's going to make that game, quote unquote, fun, and keep us playing and keep us coming back for more. One word of caution, we want to be very careful. Points and leaderboards can backfire easily. Competition is nice in healthy doses, but we don't want to rely on it exclusively. How many of you have been in that situation where we've been on a leaderboard of some sort and there's no way for us to catch up? What does that do to our motivation? We're like, why bother, right? And that's the same thing, kids will feel that. If they see the leaderboard and there's literally no way for them to catch up, or no way for the leader to come down, which is an element of gaming. It's called like the catch up, the lead killer, kind of the catch up factor. Catch up as in catch the leader, not catch up the condiment. So if there's no way for that to happen, people can get discouraged very quickly. And that's exactly the opposite of what we want. So talking about some specifics, badges. Badges are a great way to have a visible sense of progress, to represent achievement, to represent the things that we're earning. You want to make sure if you are using badges in the classroom that you have very clear expectations for how kids can earn them. You want the kids to have somewhere where they can display their badges. And again, depending on how much quote unquote competition you want, whether that's privately or publicly. Maybe they have a page in their notebook where they get to put all their badges that they can see. They can show their parents, their grandparents, or maybe a public, badging system, depending on how you set it up. It is also really important that if you do use badges, as soon as the kids earn them, you want to give them out, because that, they lose that kind of reward factor if it's delayed, extensively. And finally, you want to make sure that you include achievements and badges for performance things, not just progress. It's really not one or the other. You really want to include both, because both are ways for kids to feel successful. And if we're only rewarding their progress, that might speak to their work completion, but they might feel as if they're not making, they're not achieving in what they can do, and vice versa. So, one example that I like to use is I set up a badging system with teachers, with adults. So when I worked at a school, we set up a badge system. And as teachers participated in different trainings, in different professional learning, they earned badges for those. And each teacher got a kind of a paper frame that they could display wherever they wanted. And I printed on the pre-round labels that they look like round stickers, like the Avery labels. I created badges for each one of those. And as they earned them, I just cut them out and passed them out. And they really kind of enjoyed being able to see their progress, what they'd earned, and that sort of thing. Another element that's so much fun, that can just really add so much enjoyment in a classroom for kids, is this idea of quests, right? We talk about the hero's journey, we talk about epic quests in literature, and there's something that's really kind of cool about that. And how many of us don't want to be heroes, right? And go on quests to fight dragons and face the boss battle at the end. And so quests are a really great way for kids to feel like they're achieving something. They're not just doing the work, but they're actually moving towards something. And so quests are kind of just a themed version of a pathway. Hopefully by now you all have heard about, like pathways, playlists, choice boards, things like that. Quests are just kind of adding a little bit of theming to those things. If you already know the elements of how you're going to teach, like you've got an instructional video to give some direct instruction. You've got this activity you want them to do. You've got this time where they meet with you. And then you've got all these different instructional activities. Lay that out in a quest format. Let them think about it as each step is a quest that they're making towards progression of in this epic battle, right? One really cool thing that I want to point out is Canvas has a tool called Mastery Paths that allows you to kind of set these up automatically within Canvas. You can lock modules so that kids can't access them until they complete other modules. So a very cool way to use your LMS to achieve these kind of elements, these quests.
Hey, Katie. You have a question in the chat there from Nancy, who wants to know, do you have a resource or where can she find digital badging?
So there are a lot of resources out there. There are some things that will create them for you. I just kind of created my own, and what I do, and this might be cheating, is I Google search digital badge, or like badge for, for homework or badge for whatever. And just to kind of get ideas for a visual. And then I use Google Drawings to just insert very basic icons. And I see in the chat here, yep, Walt linked, I linked Shake Up Learning. She has some examples. Chris Zirkle said Adobe Spark has some templates. Yep, Kurt creating them in Google Drawing. What I like about creating them in Google Drawing is I can adjust my canvas size to be like 1 inch by 1 inch. And then I can download that as a JPEG. And so now I just have that picture. And that's a really cool way to also then give them virtually or digitally. You can send kids that JPEG, that image that they can then put on their digital portfolio, for example. So yeah, I'm trying to think, and DLCs, maybe you can help me out here. There was an app or a tool that helped with that. And I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. So maybe if one of you can remember it and drop it in the chat. Oh, yeah. Okay. So here as well, we talked about, I talked about quests a little bit. I linked some examples of some elementary, middle, and high school playlists, pathways, and choice boards. Because like I said, once you have those steps broken out or your instruction broken down into those individual pieces, then all you have to do is just kind of lay it out, in that progression-like format. Where can you provide choice for the kids? If you've got 2 activities and it doesn't matter which one they do first, there's a branch right there that they can choose between, kind of like in this previous example. Let me go back here, where they choose between the 2 and then they come back together. So, really you just kind of can lay it out however it works for your classroom. So one thing I want to talk about is this XP versus points versus grades idea. We live in a world of grades. We have to. That's one of our constraints. I read, I think it was on Alice Keeler, that she said school is a game, just sometimes a very poorly designed one. So we've got our grades, which are kind of like our points. One thing to keep in mind, grades are confidential. So if we want to be using points or whatever based on how the kids do or what they complete, we do have to be careful about releasing that sensitive information. Points are a great way to disguise that. So they can earn, so many points because they got 100% on an assignment, or they completed an assignment, or they mastered the objective. And the thing about grades is, sometimes they can feel tied to our abilities. Sometimes kids have really internalized that idea of, I got an A, I did it. I got a D, I can't do this, and that's can be very black and white sometimes, and sometimes feel very arbitrary. Points are similar. They can be given and they can be used to rank, but they can also bring in that, like I said, that idea, that little bit of competition. So they're kind of a double-edged sword. XP is a really great concept because kids are using that to make progress. XP is short for experience points. And so, for instance, in games, typically, when you've got experience points and levels, you need 5 experience points to get to the next level. And then to get to from level 2 to 3, you have to have 8 experience points. And then level 3 to 4, you have to have 12. And so sometimes it builds on that. So like, you know, going back to this example with this quest map here, if I complete this quest or this mission, maybe that gets me 3 XP, 3 experience points. And then I complete this one, that gets me 2. There's my 2 XP. I've now leveled up. And so, you know, so you can connect that idea of experience points and levels to the things that they're doing. One of the best things about gamification and including game elements in your classroom is this idea of fun and engagement, and themes take care of that so well. Kids love, you know, pop culture. They have so many interests. And if we can pull those interests in, can you theme all of your activities around Marvel or spies or aliens or, you know, laser sharks or something, I don't know, you know, or games like Carmen Sandiego or Minecraft. My kids are way into Minecraft, so anything Minecraft related would immediately draw their attention. And then, you know, I can get them in from there. Can you do theme them around game shows? Can you do a Family Feud, a Price is Right kind of thing? So anytime you can add some theme, you know, that can add some automatic interest and engagement. Now, all of the ones I mentioned here are, of course, proprietary. They're, you know, they're real examples, but it can be things like I mentioned, like spies or superheroes. It doesn't necessarily have to be something that's, you know, real world copyrighted, et cetera, et cetera. This slide I'm just including just as a reference point for you. Sometimes when we're thinking about games and the games we want to use in our classroom, or how we want to design some game-based elements, it helps to know what kind of games are out there. And so this is kind of just an overview of the different types of games. And that's really getting into like game design, game mechanics. You know, you've got your risk type games where you acquire territory, you're building like Minecraft, you're trading. A lot of times when a common project can be for kids to make a board game about something. And a lot of times they're building those kind of like race to the end games where you go through a track and you draw cards, things like that. An example of a collection game that just came to me that might make a little more sense is like Pretty Princess, you know, where you're trying to collect all the jewelry. So yeah, anyways, so just different types of games that you might be inspired by to create in your classroom. And then one of the last things that I want to talk to you about is these different gamer types. So there's been some research done that people have different personalities, which of course, right? And those personalities are kind of linked to these different gamer types. In the original kind of person who created this, they were achievers, explorers, socializers, and killers. You know, that's not a great term, especially in education. And so one article I read by Michael Matera, who's huge on gaming in the classroom, he substituted that name as griefers, which again, if any of your kids play Minecraft, they'll immediately know what a griefer is. So I like that substitution a little bit better. What I've done here is I've linked a quiz that you can take to kind of find out what type of gamer you are. And also I've linked an article here from Michael Matera about ideas, examples and specific ideas of what you can do in your classroom that will engage each different type of gamer. So I personally, I'm an explorer. When I game, I like to learn about the backstory, and I like to know all the information and find all the things. So for me, if my teacher included little Easter eggs, you know, in the content, I would like that because I like exploring and seeing all the different resources. Achievers are all about that. They want to, you know, they want to make levels. They want to get points. They want to be, you know, they really want to get those rewards. Griefers are those people that like the kind of the one-on-one combat, if you will. They like the head-to-head gaming. They like the winning and very similar to achievers. You can see they're both on the north side of that 4-square grid. They like acting. They like doing more so than interacting or doing with things or people. And then the last one, socializers. Those are your people that like to play together. They like to interact with things in company, et cetera, et cetera. So like I said, there's some examples here in both of those links. I've linked some resources here. The podcast we did a really great episode on feedback through digital badges, because that's one element that we didn't talk about a whole lot is feedback, but gaming provides so much quick feedback, and that's a huge part of learning. So, that's one even giant benefit that we kind of didn't even touch on today. But in this episode, our guest talked about how he creates these really cool digital badges. And so you might want to check that out. And then I linked some articles that will help you just get more information about gamification and designing that in your classroom. And I'm going to be adding to those resources. So, if you check back now and again, I'll be putting some more in there. And that way you can have that. It is exactly 12 o'clock. We did that perfect, right on time. The last thing is, if you could please give us some feedback. We really appreciate it. We do use that to get better, to improve these lunch and learns, to improve our sessions and presentations. So if you could just take a couple of minutes to go there. But that is all that I have for you today. I'd like to open it up if anybody has some questions. If anybody has some thoughts or some comments or any examples they've seen, we'd love to hear it. You can either unmute or throw that in the chat. Yes, Erica, there might be some secret clip art. Yes, Barb, I will be here for a little bit to answer questions. So if anybody wants to kind of hang back and ask in a smaller group or one-on-one, you are definitely welcome to do that as well.